Okay, good evening, everybody. This is Charlie Dobbins, and this is the once every 2 week, bi-weekly. It's not twice a month because when those months have more than 4 weeks, we might end up speaking 3 times in a month. But your group coaching call for the Masterclass Elite members, and so let me just take you through a couple of the housekeeping things. First off, I want to welcome a lot of new members here. This group coaching, online coaching, has really taken off. I'm blown away by it, but it is great. I have a lot of new people on the call today, so it's very important that I just constantly let you know disclaimers so that everybody feels comfortable with it. First off, let me just start by saying, oh no, I didn't fix the screen, so I'm going to get all of these slow drop down screens. But first off, here's the disclaimer. I have to say this to everyone. I'm an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. Always hire an attorney in your jurisdiction to help you through any transaction. You would never buy a piece of property without buying the property insurance to go along with it. You should never enter into a contract unless you have contract insurance in the form of an attorney. Short money, money well spent, but I always recommend that when you're involved in a local transaction, you hire a local attorney. Now, for many of my clients, they know that I represent them on more of a consulting basis and not on an attorney-client basis, predominantly because of what is called the unlicensed practice of law. I am only licensed in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to give legal advice there. I am not licensed in other parts of the country to do that. I will act as an attorney in virtually everything that I do, but I will not act as your attorney. So just make sure that you understand that. Now, if anyone has any questions about anything, always send it off to info@multifamilyinvestingacademy.com. My staff looks at this website, this email address first every morning. We want to get all the technical questions taken care of. If it's more of an acquisition question, they tend to come up to me, and I get those things resolved as quickly as possible. But if you have any questions, because you're a member of the Masterclass Elite program, we always want to make sure that you're well taken care of. So always use that email address. Thirdly, this is or can be an open forum, meaning if you raise your hand, if you want me to take you off mute, I will do that, and you can have the forum, and you can openly talk to me in front of all the people here on call. I ask you that you be courteous, you kind and forgiving, as Steve Martin used to always say, and just make sure that if there's a problem, if it's a specific problem, this may or may not be the forum for it. If it's a personal issue, hey, keep it to yourself. If it's a professional matter, hey, bring it to everybody. We all want to hear what types of issues are going on. But that is what is nice about this group coaching call. You have open line access to me, and I'll be more than happy to take care of any issues that you may have. Okay, guys, I apologize. I will make sure that this does not happen. I can't stand these drop-ins. Okay, if you have a question, there are 2 ways to deal with it. You can either raise your hand, as I mentioned before, and I can take you off of mute and we can talk, or if you want to, you're not so inclined, you don't want to speak in front of a whole bunch of people, you can always fill in the question box on the right-hand side of the GoToWebinar forum and type in your message there. Now, when you type in there, I will treat it as confidential, so I will not disclose who you are. I will read the question as you have written it, and then I will attempt to answer it as best I possibly can. So just you always have that option available to you as well. And then finally, and this is something I got some great compliments about the archive section the other day. Blown away by all the stuff that we have in there. But as I mentioned to somebody one time, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Believe me, there's so much more information that I'm going to be putting in on a weekly and monthly basis. But don't wait. If there is something that you need, contact our office. Send us an email at info@multifamilyinvestingacademy.com, and we will do everything we can. First, I have to check our archives in our law firm to see if there's a document that we have on file that we could post for you. But if there isn't, we might be able to put it together. I mean, there's so many resources that we have right here at our fingertips that we want to make sure that you're taken care of, that you get everything that you need. So if there's something missing for you, let us know, because I'll tell you, there may be 5 other people looking for the exact same document or some type of a lesson, and we just need to put it out there for you. All right, let's see. Next thing. Now, okay, tonight's topic. It's amazing the energy that was created when I sent out that last email when I put up that we're going to talk about seller financing in your multifamily deal, because everybody wants to get seller financing of some sort or another. I think it's a great thing to do, but I have to say you have to do it correctly. All right, when there was if you come to my classes, you've heard me say this a million times. You never lose control of the deal. You must always remain in control of the deal. One of the ways you can lose control of the deal is if you don't set up the seller financing in the correct manner. And so this discussion tonight is going to be on how to do it, why you do it, how to make sure you do it correctly so that you still always remain in control of the deal. All right, I think seller financing is great when it is done correctly. So let's first off go through those topics that I mentioned in my email of how we're going to cover this particular topic. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to ask for seller financing. Next is I'm going to make sure you don't ask the wrong way and look like this is the first day on the job for you, okay? I want to make sure that you look very professional whenever you're out there, okay? I don't want you to get out there in front of a broker and say the wrong things or look like you're a novice, even though you are. But if you're one of my students, I want to make sure you look good and you do everything correctly. Third thing is I'm going to show you the easiest places to find seller finance deals. You're going to be blown away. If you haven't gone through my first masterclass lesson, then this is going to be new to you. If you have gone through my first masterclass lesson, you may have missed this part or forgotten it, but I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. And at the same time, I'm going to insert caveats that I want you to be fully aware of. Okay, let's see. Then next thing is how to negotiate the terms of the seller financing. Remember, you're asking the seller to provide money to you, just like a bank. But those terms on that money are negotiable, and you can control how it is set up, and you should always control it. So we're going to talk about the different elements that you need to negotiate and which ones are the most important to you and how to structure that effectively. And then finally, and this may, some of you may be looking at this particular bullet point thinking, well, what does he mean by security? And the topic is going to be one way to structure the security. Now think about this for a second. What do I mean by security? Remember, in most instances, sorry about that, my screen does to me. Here we go. Hold on. Spinning wheel, get caught up. And back it up just a little bit. In your previous life, when you were dealing with seller money, he had security to get paid back by putting a second mortgage on the property. Now, what's gone on over the last several years, and now I'm starting to hear rumblings that this is changing, but what has gone on over the past several years is that first mortgage holders, the banks, did not allow for second mortgages. And so how would you be able to get seller financing from a seller and provide him with the security that he's typically used to when he offers seller financing? And so what we're going to do at the very end is I'm going to show you different ways how you can structure the security on that particular deal. All right, so let's get started in the first topic, how to ask for seller financing, okay? Don't ask, well, okay, well, no, I'm sorry, let me back up here. Why do you ask for seller financing? Okay, first off, if you don't ask, you don't get. So why not ask? It could end up being that the seller's money is cheaper than the bank's money. And you're going to negotiate the terms, so you know what the bank's terms are going to be. So why not try to negotiate better terms on the financing from the seller and save yourself some money? Remember, when you do that, what you're doing is you're reducing your debt coverage ratio and you're making it a better deal. So if you can negotiate better terms with the seller for a portion of the borrowed money, go for it. But if you don't ask, you don't get. So always ask. Now, the second thing is another reason for the seller financing, and this may seem obvious to some, but for other people, they don't quite understand the concept of seller financing. The beauty of seller financing is it reduces the amount of money you're going to need for your down payment. All right, so if you have, you've gone out to the bank and the bank says you need 20% down, and you go out and you say, well, the seller is going to give me 5%, that means you only need to raise 15% of the down payment. The seller is already taking care of 25% of the down payment for you just because you asked for seller financing. That's made your life a whole lot easier. All right, so that's the other benefit to having seller financing. Another thing is, and the reason why you ask for seller financing might be because the property cannot be conventionally financed. What does that mean? Well, if the property only has 65% occupancy, you're not going to get a bank loan. No conventional lender is going to give you a loan. So you've got to go to the seller and say, hey, we got a problem. What's the problem? I can't get the deal financed. What's wrong with you? Nothing's wrong with me. The problem is with your property. What's wrong with my property? You only have 65% occupancy. Yeah, I know. So what? Well, that means no bank is going to step up and give me any money. Are you, Mr. Seller, willing to step up and give me any money? Now, that's where the two of you start talking turkey, because what the seller is going to want, and we're going to talk about this at the very last slide, what the seller is going to want is cash up front. He's going to want you to put up 20% down. And he says, okay, you know what? I'll seller finance, but you've got to put 20% down. And what ends up happening, just so you can understand it from a conceptual standpoint, is the seller takes your cash and puts it in his pocket. And he now took 20% of the value of his property, and it's in his pocket. And guess what? He still has an equitable interest in that property. If you don't pay that mortgage, he gets the property back, and he gets to keep the 20% in his pocket. So that's something you need to be aware of. And of course, if the property cannot be conventionally financed, chances are very good it's a struggling asset. Do you really want to put 20% of your own money in that guy's pocket to go work on a struggling asset? Think twice. So that's the other thing you want to take into consideration. And this is, this gets back to my final point here on this particular bullet, is you've always got to ask yourself the question, why does the seller want to remain in the deal? Now, many times the seller remains in the deal not because he wants to, but because he has to. He can't get out from underneath this property. What you'll see, and I'm going to show you when I show you different ways to find seller finance deals, you're going to see that the problem with many seller finance deals that are being advertised as seller finance is that they're problem properties. You might not even want to touch them. So seller financing, yep, you can go online and you can find a bunch of deals that offer seller financing and make offers on them, or every time you make an offer on a property that you know that you like that's going to fit into your portfolio perfectly, ask for seller financing. So this particular discussion is going to take you through both realms, whether it's a perfect property for you, ask for seller financing, or whether it's a distressed asset and you've got to figure out how you're going to get this deal done, ask for seller financing. All right, now, how should you ask for seller financing? Now, this is I forgot to put this in the beginning section of this discussion, and that is that in every group coaching call, these are always recorded, and typically within 24 hours of the call, you will be able to find this phone call on the group coaching call archives on the membership site. That's how quickly we try to get these things up. We want these in your hands as quickly as possible. We want to make sure that all the elite members, if you couldn't make it to tonight's call, you will have instant, 24-hour access to this call, and you'll be able to have access to this very, very quickly. So how do you ask for seller financing? Now, the reason why I just said that is because I want you to take notes. But if you're not ready to take notes, you're driving or something, you will have access to this recording. But here's what you want to write down, and here's what you really want to make sure that you understand. This is what you want to say to the broker when you're talking to them prior to offering the letter of intent, prior to making an offer, and you're talking to the broker about the particular deal. What you want to say is the seller willing to get creative? That's it. That's all I want you to say. That's code. That is code. That's broker speak for seller financing. But that's how I want you to approach it. Say, is the seller willing to get creative? And then what I want you to do is shut up. Don't say another word. If you speak next, you lose. Wait for the broker to speak up. And what the broker is going to say is, well, what do you have in mind? And this is the only time I ever want you to do this. Oh, it didn't pop up. Maybe it's going to pop up on another slide and I'll regret it. But here we go. This is what I want you to say when the broker says, well, what did you have in mind? You're going to say, I don't know. I don't know. But we may need to get creative with the financing to make the numbers work. When the broker hears that, he will know that you've figured out these numbers. He will know that you found out that he was playing fast and loose with the numbers. And he's going to totally back down. When he hears you say this, he's going to think you know exactly what's going on with this deal, and you're going to have to come up with solutions to make this thing work. So all I want you to say is the seller willing to get creative? And then when he comes back at you and asks you what you mean, I want you to just be totally non-committal. I don't know, but we may need to get creative with the financing to make these numbers work. And that's all you got to do. All right, so make sure you approach the broker. So when do you have this conversation? You have this conversation before you submit your offer. Before you submit your offer, and you have this conversation with the broker. All right, if you're speaking directly to the seller, yeah, you can try to get him to these terms, but typically this conversation that I've described here is going to take place with the broker. All right, now let me just check for questions here, make sure that I'm not jumping around. I want to make sure that everybody's, oh, wow. Is there ability to ask questions? Yes, Terry, you just asked a question. You can type it in right there. My voice is a little garbled now. Hopefully it got fixed because let me know if that's the case, because I always want to make sure that everything's taken care of. And then Ronnie is excited to be here. Ronnie, we are excited to have you here. And then what effect does Dodd-Frank have on multifamily seller financing? I don't know, Gregory. I tell you what, send me an email. You talk about what effect does Dodd-Frank have on multifamily seller financing. I'll tell you something. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen any issue yet with Dodd-Frank. But Gregory, send an email to info@multifamilyinvestingacademy.com. I will research that and get back to you and make sure that gets on one of the Ask the Expert questions. And then Wanda, you did not lose me. Wanda, I'm right here. Gregory says bad connection. I cannot hear, sound going in and out. Let's see, but can't get into the arc. Okay, technical questions, send me an email at info@multifamilyinvestingacademy.com. All right, Dodd-Frank only applies to resident buyers. That's what I thought. Terry Lydon is saying that Dodd-Frank only applies to resident buyers, because I have not had to deal with it. And somebody else just said the same thing. Stacy just said the same thing. I'll tell you something, Gregory. All I do is multifamily, and we have never come up against this issue. So yeah, so that's I don't think that's going to be an issue. So okay, great questions. Let me clear all the questions so that I see. Oh. All right. Now, next subject line here is going to be how not to ask for seller financing. Okay, now I had to put this in here because I've seen new investors make this mistake, and I don't want you to make this mistake. So far, what I've taught you up to this point, if you walk into a broker and you use those lines, you are going to sound like a pro, and that's exactly how I want you to operate. Now, what I don't want you to do is go out there and ask this question. Will the seller do 100% financing? That is just code for the fact that you have no money and you're an incredibly weak buyer. So don't lead with that. I'll tell you something, folks. It may end up being that the seller has to do 100% financing, all right? But we don't know that at this particular point, all right? You may need to do this deal through, as I said, through seller financing, but not at the letter of intent stage. You are going to have to find that out later on, typically at the due diligence stage. Once you get in there and you find out that there are problems with this property and you are not going to be able to get it conventionally financed, you can't even get it financed, that is the time you do is what we say, you take it out of contract. And I'm telling you, if the archive section does not have a draft of a termination of your purchase and sale letter, I have those in my archives. We use them all the time, and it goes to the rule, always remain in control of the deal. But if you got into a deal and you got through the due diligence stage and you got to the the 29th day before your money went hard and you said, I don't like this deal is terrible, you terminate the deal. You send them that letter that's in the archive section, and then you say, listen, I don't like this deal. I'm taking my money off the table, but let's renegotiate the deal. Nothing wrong with doing that, especially if after going through the 30 days of due diligence, you find out that these guys have sold you a bill of goods. It's their responsibility. No, it's not really their responsibility, but they should, in good faith, renegotiate the deal with you because it's not what you guys signed up for. So don't be afraid to terminate a purchase and sale contract. We do it all the time. It all goes back to remaining in control of the deal and making sure you get the best terms available out there. So never walk up to a seller or a broker and say, hey, do you think the seller is willing to do 100% financing? Never do that on day one. You only start to have that conversation after you've completed the due diligence. And if the deal is not what they said it is, you have no reason not to do this. So definitely sign on board to get that taken care of. Now, let's go through the easiest place to find seller finance deals. Oh, you're going to cringe when you see this. Yes, I said it. I said LoopNet. But let me just show you, because what you can do is when we're done this phone call, you can take this quick little step through, I think it's 3 steps, find the deals on LoopNet that are seller finance deals, and then contact the brokers and start making offers just for fun. Just get out there and try my lines. You'll see that my lines work. This is like a pickup joint here. Use my best lines to pick up ladies. And I'm giving them to you right now. And try them on LoopNet. Go find these deals, these seller finance deals, and get out there and make offers and see what happens. All right? And it's so easy. You can start doing it tonight as soon as we hang up. All right? Here's what I mean. When you go on LoopNet, what you're going to do is you're going to search, come up here to the for sale tab, right up here in the top left-hand corner. You're going to click on that for sale tab, and it's going to do a search, new search. Click on new search. This screen will pop up. All right? Now, first, you're going to do 2 things in this screen. Well, actually 3. First thing you're going to do is check off multifamily, and then make sure that the state section says all states. In this particular case, I took a snapshot of the screen when it said Massachusetts, but as you'll see in the next screen, I fixed it so it said just all states. And then what I want you to do is come down here to the keyword seller financing or owner financing. Do 2 different searches under those 2 different terms. And then what will happen is once you click on that screen, you will find, and look down here, 256 listings of seller financed deals. And the thing that I found really interesting is when I did this, I thought, well, should I dig down deeper for this conversation, or should I keep this kind of on the surface a little bit? And so I didn't click on any one particular property, but I looked down here to this Shadowbrook North. Right there, Shadowbrook North. And this is through Phillips Commercial down there in Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I got to tell you, I think I've seen this deal before, Shadowbrook North, and now the seller is offering some form of seller financing. So here, folks, go on here. I did this actually as a search sort based upon the number of units. Contact these brokers. Ask them for the property packages. Run the numbers. Contact the broker and say, is the seller willing to get creative? Well, yeah, we know he is because he came up on this search, but how creative? Tell me a little bit more. What's he looking to do? I'm interested, but only, because remember, I might need to get creative in order to make this deal work. When the broker hears that, he knows you're a player. All right. Now, let's talk about, oops, I think, let me see. Yeah, here we go. Here, oh. All right. Let's talk about how to negotiate the terms. All right. Now, remember when the broker asked you what you had in mind, you said, I don't know, but I might need to get creative in order to make this deal happen. All right. Remember that back to that time? In this particular instance, when we're talking about negotiating the terms for the seller financing, I want you to continue to play dumb. I want you to still be that Peter Falk Columbo character. I want you to make it seem like you don't know what you're doing, but deep down you know exactly what you're doing. And what you're doing is you want them, just like that old, the typical adage that the first person that mentions numbers in a real estate negotiation loses. It's the exact same thing here when you're negotiating the seller financing. The first person to mention the terms specifically loses. All right, so you don't want to be that person. So what are the terms that you get to negotiate? All right, first off is the amount. How much is the seller willing to bring to the table? How much paper is the seller willing to come back with in order to make this deal happen? 1%, 5%, 10%? I doubt 20%. But how much can you negotiate in the form of a dollar amount for the seller to bring to the table? That's the first term you're going to negotiate. The next one has to do with the term, the length of the term. Now, here it is. Write this down, commit this to memory, because this is a hard and fast rule. If your first mortgage is 10 years, make sure your seller financing is the same term, 10 years. If the first mortgage is 5 years, go with the 5-year term for the seller financing. You never want the seller financing option to run shorter than the first mortgage. And why is that? It's because just deal with the financing all at one time. Don't get into a situation where you get into a property and then 3 years later you've got to refinance the deal to pay off the second mortgage. You don't want to be in that situation. So always make sure that you negotiate the term of the seller financing to run concurrently with the first mortgage. All right? Now, the rate, that's the interest rate. How much should you offer for the interest rate? Now, here's the rub. The seller is going to want a higher interest rate than the first mortgage. Why? Because he technically is at a greater risk than the people on the first mortgage. If the first mortgage gets foreclosed on, he loses. So he's going to want to make more money in the form of a higher interest rate. And what my reaction to that is, go pound sand. You're getting the principal, you're getting the sale proceeds from the first mortgage, you're walking away with cash. You need to come to the table with a little bit more. And the only reason why seller financing is going to work for you is because the cost of the money is less than what the seller is offering, what the first mortgage, the first bank is offering. So the first bank is offering 6% interest. You want the second mortgage, the seller financing, to always be less than that 6%. And you might hear me correcting myself at all times. I try to stop myself from saying second mortgage. This is not necessarily a second mortgage, and you'll find out why in a moment. What we're calling it here is seller financing. It may never be a mortgage. So those are the terms that those are some of the terms you want to talk about. Now, the next thing has to do with security. You see, the seller is going to say to you, okay, fine, I'll give you a 5% seller financing deal, but what's my security? How do I know I'm going to get it back? And the guy is going to say, what you're going to say is, well, I don't know. I don't know. Well, then I want a mortgage on the property. Then you say, well, I can't give you one. Because the first mortgage holder, the first mortgage holder, the guy who's writing you a big fat check, that guy will not allow a second mortgage on the property. So we can't do that. So what do you think we should do, Mr. Seller? How can I provide you with security? And now this is where you really want to get technical. This is where you want to have a local attorney or if you want your local attorney to work with me, and I can advise them on how this needs to be structured. But here's what you don't want to have in any security instrument. Okay, hold on. Here's what you don't want to have in any security instrument. Default provisions. EODs, what we call evidence of default. In other words, you don't want this guy to be able to foreclose on you. He's going to want to. If you don't pay him, he's going to want to get his money back somehow. And the way he does it is in the form of default provisions. You want to make sure that whatever note or whatever instrument you write to provide him with his security, it does not give him any right to seize the property. And that's very, very important. And there are ways to do that, but you just have to know how to do it. Now, I might be getting into some aspect that it might be a little bit too technical, but let me tell you something, folks. You get into an offer, you get an offer accepted, and you're going to start moving into the purchase and sales stage. This information becomes invaluable. This is when you're going to start negotiating this information, is during the purchase and sales stage. So make sure that you have at least a broad understanding of what happens. Okay. Now, let me just check my notes here. All right, now we kind of come down to the security structure. Okay. Follow me on this, folks. I teach this in my 3-day Shark Tank. I'm amazed at the level of interest from the people when I have this discussion. Typically, it's a 3-day weekend, and I teach this particular aspect on the morning of the 3rd day. Most people are rolling out of bed; they're exhausted. They've been listening to me talk for 2 days already, and then we come up to this part. And you'll see their eyes lighten right up because they want to understand how to make this thing happen. So here's the situation. You've now made an offer, and you've asked for seller financing, and your offer has been accepted. And the seller comes back and says, I accept all your terms, but let's figure out a way that you are going to pay me back that seller finance component. And you say, okay, I can't put any debt on the property. I can't put anything on the behind my first mortgage. So let's try this way. Why don't I try to give you the same type of security instrument that you would get from a mortgage, but not on the property, but through the limited liability company that's going to own this property? And the seller says, tell me more. All right, I tell you what, let me pause here for a second. Oh, you better be kidding me. There we go. Hold on, folks. All right, hold on. I had tons of questions. All right. First question. What if I offer at the front in the letter of intent 3 different offers, a cash offer, a regular offer, a little bit higher than the cash, and owner financing? I have heard a guru suggest that, okay, hold on a second. Hopefully I'm going to get the rest of that answer. Oh, okay. I guess that's the end of the question. I've heard a guru suggest that. Okay. So the question from Ronnie is, when you make your letter of intent offer, how do you feel about making 3 offers? A low ball cash offer, a medium offer that's got some financing involved, and a higher offer that has more some type of seller financing involved. You know what? That's fine. I don't typically do that in any of the deals we look at. We look at offers, we figure out what works for us, and then we make that offer. I think that when you start to give too many offers to the seller, I personally think it makes you look weak as a buyer. I think these guys have been to enough of these weekend seminars to know that this is what these gurus teach you: offer low, medium, and high, and they see you coming 1,000 miles away. So I say you go out there with the offer that works right for you the first time, and then make that number work. Now, the way you just described it, Ronnie, is that you've got 3 different offers. So you've got to go through and run the scenario, run the pricing on those 3 different scenarios and make sure that each one works. So, if you're going to offer, your third offer has some type of a seller financing component to it and it's higher than what the second is, you've got to go run those numbers and make sure the debt coverage ratio still works for that third offer. If it doesn't, then you got to go back and change everything around. So, I mean, listen, I'm not going to say don't do that. I don't do that. I always make sure the offer that we go out there with is the offer that works for us. And I know, Ronnie, you're new to the program, and I don't know if you've listened to me teach before, but my one of the rules I have is that if you cannot hang your head in shame making an offer, you've offered too much. So that's why I always go out with the offer that works best for me. All right. Can you realistically invest? Hold on, did I miss something? I think I might have missed something. Okay, Gregory asked the question, is that under the representations and warranties? Okay, I don't know what you mean, Gregory. Is what under the representations and warranties? And typically the reps and warrants is a provision within the purchase and sale agreement. So I need to know exactly what you're talking about to answer that question. So if you could fill in answer another, just type right in the block as to exactly what the what you're talking about, I would be more than happy to answer that for you. Let me see, can you realistically invest in multifamily assets? Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry. This gentleman wrote 2 questions, one got cut off, and okay. Let me just read both questions. You'll see the dilemma that I had. The first one said, can you realistically invest in multifamily assets? Okay, maybe you shouldn't even be on this phone call if that was the question. But then he writes again, and he says, can you realistically invest in multifamily assets outside your geo confines, i.e. 1,000 miles away? All right, okay. This is, and I talk about this, I think it's in the masterclass lesson 2, where I talk about, the types of properties that you're looking to invest in. All right. Okay. This is, it's just us, we're all friends here. Let's talk turkey, all right? Obviously, we know of some gurus out there that are trying to sell a book on emerging markets, and that is how, their shtick in this business is to come up with something that distinguishes them from everyone else. And in this particular case, it has to do with, getting out there and buying property in emerging markets. What's an emerging market? Well, right now in today's economy, yeah, there are some markets that might be doing better than others, but you know what? No matter where you are, no matter where you live, there are deals to be had in your own backyard. Now, can you realistically invest in property 1,000 miles away? Yes, you can. I've done it. It is not an easy thing to do. You will always want to make sure that you know what you're doing. If you're a novice to this and you're trying to buy a 150 unit property, 1,000 miles away, and you don't know how to run a property and you're going to turn this all over to a third-party management company, it doesn't work that way. You've got to understand how this business works. It's so much easier when you have that property right there in front of you. And believe me, it's amazing. I've got some clients actually on the call right now. They've been looking 1,000 miles away, but lately they just got offers accepted in their backyard. And that's probably where their success is going to be. So when I come up to this particular question, what I always ask the person is, forget this concept of emerging markets. Forget this concept of buying things 1,000 miles away. Answer this question for me. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? The whole reason for what you're doing, if you're looking to build a nice lifestyle with multifamily property, what you're actually doing is building a business. And that business invests in multifamily property. So the question is, where do you want to own your business 5 years from now? Do you want to own it in Phoenix and you live in Boston? Oh, believe me, folks, I've done that type of thing before. That is a tough lifestyle. I'm 50 years old. I'm not looking to make life a lot harder for me. So you've got to ask yourself the question, where do I want to be 5 years from now? And then start moving your life in that direction. Start looking for property in that marketplace. And if it's in your own backyard, that's fine. I mean, all the big heroes of mine who are real estate investors made their money in my hometown of Nashua, New Hampshire. They didn't make their money in Dallas-Fort Worth. They made their money right in my backyard. And you can do the same thing. There's no reason why you can't. Don't believe these gurus that teach you otherwise, so that you can buy their book and move them up the Amazon charts. All right. Hopefully that answered that question. The question kind of scared me a little bit. Do I buy commercial paper non-performing notes from banks that are holding multifamily assets on their balance sheets? I mean, right now, the answer to the question is, do I? Yes, I do. Have I? Not yet. I am in the process of negotiating a 200 property portfolio from a bank for their non-performing assets. They're a lot of it's single-family homes, and I've got a couple of apartment complexes in there that they're gonna throw in the mix. Is really what I want to get my hands on. So the answer is yes. I do that with local banks. I do think that you're better off using local banks in order to find these types of deals. And I think the best way to find out who it is and who you want to talk to is by going to BauerFinancial.com. That is in the masterclass lesson 1. So Terry, I know you're new to the program. You haven't had a chance to watch the first class yet. Go and watch the first class and you'll see my discussion on that particular topic. All right, let's take another next question. If you're looking, Charles, if you're looking at a 15 or 30-year mortgage, do these same rules apply to lining up the terms with the seller? Okay. Let me read this question to you again and listen to what he's asking, and then I'm going to explain it. If you're looking at a 15 or a 30-year mortgage, do these same rules apply to lining up the terms with the seller? Now, what he's referring to is that portion of the negotiating of the terms of the seller financing, such that the number of years on the seller financing matches up exactly with the number of years on the bank financing. Okay, now this particular person, a new kid on the block, is misunderstanding how multifamily mortgages work. Now, what you're asking here is, if you're looking at a 15 or a 30-year mortgage, what you're asking in that question, and I'm assuming this, I think I'm going to be right though, is that the 15 and 30 represent the amortization period and not the term. You see, when you're dealing with residential mortgages, typically the term is the same as the amortization period. If you've got a 30-year AM, you've got a 30-year term. It doesn't work that way in multifamily. You can get a 30-year amortizing mortgage, but a 10-year term or a 7-year term. And that's the term that I'm talking about in my discussion. So if you go out there and get a Fannie Mae mortgage on a multifamily property that is a 10-year term with a 30-year AM, and you're going to get some seller financing on the deal, the seller financing is going to match up with the 10-year component, not with the 30. So when you have to pay back the first mortgage is the same time you have to pay back the second mortgage. Okay? Hopefully that answered the question. Next. Good stuff, Charles. Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Thank you. You are welcome. That was an earlier question. Okay. Thanks, Greg. I'm very new to this. Okay, good. I'm very new to this. So I'm wondering, how do you finance the rest of the deal with seller financing? Okay. All right. So what this particular question is how do you finance the rest of the deal with seller financing? Okay, so let's say, for instance, that you've gone out and you found this $1 million property. It is a steal and you want this thing, but it's a tricky property, and you go back to the seller and say, hey, or the broker, and say, hey, listen, is the seller willing to get creative? Well, what do you have in mind? Well, I don't know, but the only way I'm going to be able to make this thing happen is if the seller is willing to provide some type of creative financing. What do you think? And then he comes, well, make an offer. Okay, great. So he makes an offer of 5%. Seller's got to take back 5%. So that leaves you with 15%, or in a $1 million mortgage, you've got to raise $150,000 in down payment funds plus all the closing costs, which I talk about in the private money tutorial. And this is not all this is not a shill trying to get you all to buy my program. You're already in my program. This is all in the program. I'm just trying to tell you when you're going to see this information from me. So you've now got to get out there and raise private money for $150,000 to close this deal. That is called equity. Now, what we've talked about up to this point is called debt. So the mortgage, first mortgage, seller financing, we're all going to structure it in the form of debt. In the rest of it, the seller financing, not the seller financing, but the equity is going to be in the form, as I mentioned, of equity, meaning your investors are going to come to the table with $150,000. Now, for this particular student here on the call, I'm not going to get deep into that. That's really on the private money side. But that $150,000, the best way for you to start to find that money is through friends and family. But you have to get the deal put together first. You got to make sure it's a good deal. You got to go through the due diligence, and then once you say this is a great deal, then you're going to get out there to all your friends and family and try to raise $150,000. All right. If you don't have any friends and you don't have any family, start building your list of potential investors. Just build a list of names. You do not have a deal to go out there with, but all you're trying to do is start to build your business of potential investors in the deal. Okay, hold on a second. There are tons of questions. I will answer every single question. Just in case you missed that, I will answer every single question. I think there are a lot of multifamily deals in Southern California. Absolutely, there are deals everywhere. You know, just picture this. When I'm flying into a city and the airplane is lining up for the landing over a city like Boston, you know, LaGuardia, Washington, and I'm coming into that runway into a major city, think of all the apartment buildings I am flying over. All of those apartment buildings are owned by people. I have never bought a property from a corporation. I have always bought property from a person. That person lives, dies, divorces, gets tired, retires, life events change, and they want to sell their property. Depending upon the life event change, it will depend, really matters on how good of a deal it is and whether you can get in there and steal it. But you've got to get out there and knock on doors and find these deals in order to get the deal done. Don't sit around and wait for it to happen. It will run past you and you'll never even know it hit you. So yes, there are deals everywhere. Look at every single apartment building when you're driving down the street. Every single one of them is owned by a person. And sooner or later, they're going to sell. And that's what you want. All right. Now, this person, I want 5 properties in the next 5 years. No, not good enough. Sorry. This is a new student. I love these new students. She writes, I want 5 properties in the next 5 years. No, that's not going to work for me. 5 what properties? 5 single-family residences? 5 20s? 5 what? I want specific definitions. And as I told this the story that I had mapped out my 5-year plan. I was going to own 1,000 units in 5 years. And I was going to start off in the first year just with 20 units. Well, at the end of the first year, I owned 128 units. All I wanted was 20. I ended up with 128 because I was in the business and constantly looking for deals, and that's how this happened. So I'm not going to use your name because I don't want you to think I'm picking on you. When you say I want 5 properties in 5 years, I want your goals to be better defined than that. I want to know exactly what you mean by that. So you don't have to type it here. Send me an email, info@multifamilyinvestingacademy.com. I want to hear what you have to say. All right, next question. Okay. Question is, as an elite member, do you have access to me when you're in the middle of a deal from a legal standpoint? No. Okay, and the only yes and no. The real no to that goes to the legal standpoint. I cannot represent you in any way, shape, manner, or form. I just won't. I won't take on any law clients. But if you've got a question, you've got a problem, absolutely. Send me an email. I think there's some people on this call that have done that with me in the past. If you've got a problem, just let me know. The whole thing here is because you're in this program, I do not want to see you fail. I do not want to see you get in any form of trouble. And if it means just picking up the phone, calling me, or sending me an email, definitely do it. I will do everything I can to make sure that you're protected. But from a legal standpoint, obviously I'm an attorney and I act that way, but I have to be very specific that I am not your attorney. I'll work with your attorney, but I cannot represent you. All right, next question. Okay, this is an interesting question. What metrics do you use when you have a multifamily deal in a C-class neighborhood, but 4 blocks away there's a war zone area? Hey, let me tell you something. I don't think there's much difference in many cases between a C-class neighborhood and a war zone. I mean, like they say, buying C-class property is like catching a falling knife. You got to catch it at just the right time or you're going to get cut. C-class property is C for a reason. It's on the downslide. And the only way you can take a C-class to a B-class is with a big bucket of money. So if you're looking to buy a C-class property, but you have no intentions of rehabbing it or renovating it, that thing is just going to continue to slide from a C to a war zone or a D-class property. So, what metrics do I use when I have a multifamily deal? Well, I don't quite understand what it is that I'm measuring. And metrics help me measure certain things, but in this particular question, I'm not quite sure I know what it is that I need to measure. All I know is that C-class property, Terry, you're new to this, or maybe you have heard me say this before, but my bumper sticker on my car says life is too short to own C-class property. It's a tough road. And if your C-class property is right down the street from a war zone, get out of Dodge. I wouldn't want to own that. Another rule I have is I only buy property that I'd also want to live in. So, is a C-class property 4 blocks away from a war zone someplace you really want to live in? You want to go in there, knock on the doors, and collect the rent? I don't know. That's a tough one. Think twice. And when the other thing you want to think about is, like I mentioned before, where are you going to be 5 years from now? But more importantly, what's your portfolio going to look like? What are the assets in your portfolio going to look like? Okay, so think about that. All right. Now, last question before I jump into this last topic. And man, this has been a great hour. How viable is bird dogging and wholesaling multifamily in today's market? Do you ever use either, or do you strictly do your own deal finding? I actually do both. I have a deal under contract I'm trying to wholesale. I have 3 deals that I'm trying to bird dog for a client. Trying to unload for a client. It's all very, very viable because in this business isn't really real estate. This business is the contracts, legal contracts, lease contracts, wholesale contracts, purchase and sale contracts, option contracts. It's all about the contracts. Same is true with bird dogging and wholesaling. It's just contracts. So all of it is very, very viable, and we use it all the time. And folks, if you go into the archive section, I wrote a paper a while back. It's in there. I just sent it to somebody the other day, so I know it's in the archive section. It talks about bird dogging multifamily deals. It's really pretty good. It's like a 70-page document I wrote. So off the top of my head while I'm here on this call, I cannot remember the name of the document, but go in the archive section, search around for it, and if you're looking for bird dogging and wholesaling information, I've got it there in the archive section. If you don't see it, let me know, and I've got it back in my law firm archives. We have all this information on site. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't go buy some other guru's stuff. You already get it right here with the oh yeah, okay, there it is. Yeah, this guy. Here I am talking about it. It's called the Internet Deal Finder. The guy that I sent it to happened to just answer the question. It's called the Internet Deal Finder. Go check it out, download it. It's on the archive section. If you can't find it, just let me know, and I want to make sure that it's up there. So, okay, that's helpful. All right, so let me clean up these questions, and let me wrap it up by this one final component here. All right, I kind of jumped forward. Let me see if I can jump back a little bit with this. so you can see. All right. Here's how it works. You're going to buy a property. You're going to put that property as an asset in a company. I use all of my companies, all my entities are limited liability companies. So in this particular case, that's what we're going to use. So the property is within this LLC. Now, who owns the LLC? Well, the members own the LLC. And the question is, those members can be put into different categories of membership depending upon what their roles, responsibilities, and benefits are, okay? So obviously, the first question is, who's the first group? You are the first group. So we're going to call you Class A. What do you get with Class A? Well, you didn't put a dime into the deal, all right? So Class A members didn't put cash in, but they still get a membership interest in the LLC. Now, what is that number? I don't know. Every deal is different. It depends upon what you negotiate. It depends upon how much fat there is in the deal. But let's say that you're going to keep 25% ownership in this property. All right? So you get 25%. And here's the other thing. You get total control of the LLC. You dictate all aspects of the running of that property because Class A members get that. They're the only ones that do, and they control the whole entire thing. Sound good? Sound like the type of company you're looking to run? Well, this is how you do it in your operating agreement. The next group are the Class B members. Like, remember, Andrew asked the question about how do I raise the rest of the down payment? Well, these people are the ones that bring your down payment to the table. How much do we give them of the deal? Well, they brought in all the cash, and I took 25%. That means there's still 75% left on the table. You know what? All of these Class B members are going to get 75%. So right away, 100% of the deal is spent between these two members. Now, these members, what do they get for that 75%? They get distributions. They get, if there's a dividend, not a dividend, but any profit on the company, they get 75% of the profit. I get the other 25%. Now, all of this can be structured and negotiated differently. And that's the beauty of a limited liability company, is you can set it up a million different ways. That's why this is all I use, and it's really nice. Now, remember, we got a problem here. In order to get this deal done, we had to ask for seller financing. And the seller said, sure, I'll give you 5% of the deal, which translates into $100,000, but I want some type of security. Well, we can't give you a mortgage. Well, what are you going to give me? Well, what we are going to give you is membership in this other class. And this other class are called Class C members. Okay, that's interesting. How do I get my money back? Well, here's how it's going to work, Mr. Seller. You are going to get membership in the LLC in Class C. You have absolutely no voting rights whatsoever. You cannot tell me how to run this business. But for that, here's what I give you. I'm going to give you $100,000 interest in the property. And every year, I'm going to pay you interest on that $100,000, just like a mortgage. And the other thing is, I am going to make sure that the Class A members and the Class B members do not get any distributions until you've been paid all of your interest. And you cannot, well, actually, if we fail to do this, if we fail to pay you back, if we fail to give you the interest on your money, then you get all of our membership interest. We lose the property back to you. What does that sound like? Does that sound like a second mortgage with foreclosure rights? Exactly. But is it technically, legally? No, it isn't. It's a specific membership class with certain rights. And that is how you can structure the security for seller financing through a limited liability company operating agreement. It solves the problem with the bank, where the bank says you're not allowed to put a second mortgage on, and it secures the Class C member that he gets that particular protection that he's always been looking for. All right? So, folks, there's one last thing I've got to tell you. Here it is, and this is very, very important for you to understand. Let me just click on this last slide. Here's the final part. What might happen in these situations is that the seller is willing to be the bank. In other words, the seller is willing to provide you with 100%, or not even 100, but with all the financing you need to make this deal happen. And the reason why he does that is because he wants you to put down a down payment. And as I mentioned before, that down payment comes to him and goes into his pocket. And now he holds the mortgage that you've just given him on the property. Here's the problem. If he does not own that property outright, then someone else has foreclosure rights ahead of you. In other words, if the guy like these, it's a wraparound mortgage is what we're talking about. Be very, very leery of these situations, because if you let's take Andrew's situation. Andrew says that he's going to buy this $1 million property. He goes out there and he asks the seller for 80% mortgage. And the seller says, sure, I'll give you an 80% mortgage. You've got to give me 20% down. So Andrew has to go out to all his friends and family and raise $200,000. So Andrew goes out and raises $200,000 from his very best friends. He gives it to the seller, and the seller puts the money in his pocket and gives Andrew an $80,000 mortgage. So now Andrew owns the property and is paying down the $800,000 note. But what Andrew didn't realize was that the seller had debt on the property. There was already a mortgage on that property. And the seller is paying that mortgage, but you know what, guess what? He's decided he's not going to pay it anymore. So the bank comes in and forecloses on him and takes the property back. And Andrew is left saying, hey, wait a minute. I own that property. He goes, oh, no, your mortgage was behind mine. I'm taking it back. He didn't pay me. Well, I just gave him $200,000. Well, good luck to you getting that money back. And Andrew's like, well, wait a minute. That's all my friends and family money. I just lost their $200,000. How am I going to get that back? Well, not on this deal, you're not. And the reason was because when that guy gave you the seller financing in the form of what you thought was a first mortgage, it wasn't really a first mortgage. So if ever you get in a situation like this, you want to make sure that you have local counsel go into a title search and make sure that your note, your mortgage, is in a first position. If it's not in a first position, don't do the deal. Do not do it. Especially if you're out there asking your grandmother for $200,000. You do not want to be in that position to go to Granny and say, sorry, I didn't do a title search. That's not what you want to do. So that's the other risk involved with seller financing. Okay, so we're coming in for a landing here. Let me just check to see if we have any more questions. Great questions today. Yes, we do. Hold on. Okay. Class A similar to GP. Okay, you got to explain GP to me, because it's not rolling off the top of my tongue right now at 9:07 on a Thursday night when I have to get up every morning. General partner. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, Class A. The question is Class A similar to a general partner? It is, but the problem with a general partner is you still have a whole lot of liability. Within the Class A structure, within the structure of the limited liability company, all Class A members are given limited liability protection. General partners can get screwed. You don't want to do that. The Class A members have the protection of the limited liability company. So that is the one major difference between the Class A members of a limited liability company and the general partner members of a partnership. But the thing is, oh, and then okay, he answered the question right in the second part. So yeah, you don't want to get, I deal strictly in limited liability companies. I think they are the easiest. I think that, if you're looking to set up your business, what you want to do is open up your major entity in a state that allows for series LLCs. Massachusetts will not do series LLCs. Why? Because they want my $500 for every time I open up an LLC. But if you go to a state that allows for what's called a series LLC, that is how I would, if I had to start today, I would start with a series LLC and then purchase properties in sister LLCs below that parent LLC. So, general partnerships, they may be going the way of the dodo bird for certain reasons, especially with limited liability companies just becoming so much easier to work with and easier to structure. Okay, man, these are great questions. Wow, you guys have me on my toes. Okay, does that $100,000 interest for the Class C member represent the seller's equity interest? Yes, yes. That number, that $100,000 that I used in my example, is equal to the seller financing portion that he offered back in the letter of intent stage. So letter of intent stage. So if we got him to agree to offer us $100,000 in seller financing, that Class C membership interest of $100,000 is the same number. All right, so that's how that works. You want to make sure the two of them tie together. Okay. Yes, look at that. I was being reprimanded by everybody on general partner. Everybody's telling me GP is general partner. Well, yeah, okay. I know that it's late and it was out of context for me. Okay. So finally, last question. I hope if anybody has any more, this will be the last question. This has been a great call. Thank you so much. It will be on the website, the membership website tomorrow. And anybody has any questions that I didn't get covered, just remember info@multifamilyinvestingacademy.com. Okay, so we need to tell the bank to put our note in the first position before the first mortgage the seller has. Okay, how can they do that? How can we make sure the seller keeps paying? Okay, first off, you can't put the way a mortgage gets in different positions is based upon who shows up at the courthouse first. If the bank shows up first and records their mortgage, they are in a first position. Everybody behind them is in a lesser position, second, third, fourth. Okay, so that's how you rank the numbers. Now, if you are going to do seller financing, and this guy's going to give you he's going to be the bank, all you have to do is go down to the courthouse and find out if there's a mortgage ahead of you. If there's a mortgage ahead of you, you will not enter into that mortgage unless that first mortgage has been released. He has to pay off that first mortgage and put your mortgage in first position now. If he doesn't do that, if he doesn't pay off that first mortgage, then you will never be in a first mortgage position. That's just how it works. It's that's why you do your closings at the courthouse at the registry, because you want to sign the papers and you walk right over to the desk and have them record it. You are first in line. So that's how these mortgages and notes get recorded at the registry, and that's how you determine what position you are in line. So, okay. I just got a great compliment. The guy says, this is the best. Won't call you a guru, and I appreciate that. I never want to be called that. Don't ever call me that, please. Thanks. So, hey, everybody, great call. Listen, next 2 weeks, what you really have to be doing, go through my information, dig down deep. If you've got a topic you're struggling with, let me know. I probably have all the information back here at the house. And then what I want you to do, and this is key, is as we start moving through this process, you're going to be making offers. Otherwise, it's just you and me talking. Start to make offers. Fall on your face, trip on your tongue, but make offers. You're not making offers, you're not in this business. Okay? Hey, guys, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the kind words you're all typing in there for me. And I will talk to you soon. Enjoyed. Everybody have a great night. Talk to you soon.